the engineer here. He is responsible for the environmental office since 2005. I would like to know from you briefly, what is the role of this office? You've been working more than 20 years now. What are the indicators to see our success? How do you get the fund? What's going on? Please tell us. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Abla. Thank you so much, ECES. And I would like to thank Dr. Abla for inviting me back again to the philosophy of the environmental compliance. Actually, that was at the beginning. It was an agreement between the Ministry of Environment and the Egyptian Industrial Federation, the federation as a representative of the private sector, and the Ministry of Environment is the entity that is responsible for the environment. Here, I mean the government, they draft the laws, and then the entity, which is the Federation of the Egyptian Industrial Federation, will implement the laws. So this is the difference between the commitment and to help to implement such commitments, which is the Egyptian factories and the private sector. And for this reason, we established a unit in the federation in order to help the Egyptian factories, the member of the federation, in order to implement the environmental laws and to achieve the environmental objectives. Since the unit was established in the year 2002, and later on we start tackling energy and renewable energy, the society responsibility, till we reached in the year 2015. Egypt ratified the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So our mandate was to achieve the objectives and to help the factories to achieve the 17 Sustainable Development Goals with different percentage. So a small question, how many factories do we have here in the room? Will you please raise your hand? There is one beside him. So the members of the federation, they are all the factories in Egypt, the formal Egyptian factories. This is an obligatory membership for any formal factory in Egypt. So therefore, if I have, for example, under my umbrella in the federation, 100,000 factories that they are registered in many industrial chambers, so these are the formal factories that we are dealing with. Outside this, this is the business sector, and this is a totally different story. But what I'm talking about now, I'm talking about a private sector factory. According to the law, they are members of the federation. When we started in the year 2005, the office started in 2002, but we start providing our services, our technical and financial services in the areas that I mentioned, sustainable development, since the year 2005. The technical support here, I mean whatever is related to building the capacities, like training, dissemination of new technologies that is related to the environment or to the renewable energy or to the treatment of the sewage water. Actually, terminologies are increasing now. When we started, we had pollution prevention. Then we were advanced a little bit in 2006 and 2007 to be the cleaner production. So the word is changing in the terminologies. And according to this, you are trying as much as you can to co-op with these new terminologies. Then after this, we are now adopting the circular economy, the green economy, lots of things that at the end we are talking about what? We are talking about the SMEs and to reduce name it whatever you want, to reduce the waste of the raw material. I want to reduce the waste of the raw material in Egypt. So how I'm going to do this? Is it an environmental aspect? Yes, it is. Why it is environmental? Because any usage that exceed what I need in the raw material outside the factory, those working in the environment, they will call it pollution. For example, I have textile. I'm buying a dye in order to get a specific color. What happened is there is a waste of this dye, and it was combined with the sewage water outside the fence of the factory. I'm not translating this, that we translate it as water pollution. So actually, whenever we have more options, more suggestions, more recommendations in the production line in order to reduce this, so it means that I am reducing the pollution outside the fence of the factory. So I'm doing what is called the compliance, the environmental compliance. Inside the factory, we call it raw material that we paid money, but it was not used in a proper way. It might be chemicals in the sewage water that will pollute the water, emissions, for example, that will increase the emissions of the factory. But actually, my boiler, and if I maintain the temperature, I will be complying. So how I'm going to do this? So I will reduce using the energy in the boiler. So again, when I look to any production line, there is a waste, something we paid money, but it was not used properly. Let's move to another point, which is reducing the percentage of the default. Meaning, when I raise the efficiency of my production, the percentage, instead of being 10%, it's going to be 2%. So it's either two things. One, it is solid waste that you get rid of it, but again, you're going to face the environmental laws, or something that you're going to recycle. You're going to re-enter it again in the production line. So translating what we call outside the fence of the factory, wastes, solid wastes, or emissions, or water pollution. Inside the fence of the factory, it can be translated into something I paid money for it, I have to use it properly, instead of being in problems outside the fence of the factories. We, as the office, we have technical support and financial support. A question: you did not tackle the energy, which is the transition to renewable energy. You're only talking about, yes, specific points that they have an environmental impact, but what about the transition to renewable energy? Do you have this or not? This is a very specified question. Yes, we have. The answer is yes. I gave you some examples what we do. I was giving you an example. It varies from one industry to another. From construction, for example, it has is different than food products and than textile. But saving energy, it's very important and it's very essential in environmental compliance. Number one, any money that you spend on energy, it's supposed that you spent it in order to use it in the production process, not to waste it. The efficiency of a boiler, I beg your pardon, or there is a kind of leakage in the pipes, for example. Anything in the production line that you reduce energy, it has economic and environmental dimension, and that's what we are looking for, an economic dimension for anything that we do. Renewable energy, it's with us, don't worry. And the finance it's implemented on the renewable energy as well. I distribute some green papers and a brochure. If you don't have it, I'll give it to you after the presentation. I will distribute the rest. The green paper, this is our application, which is the request to get the finance. Simply speaking, very, very straightforward. It is not a banking finance. Why it is not a banking finance? Because when I compare it with the bank, we are far away from what the banks provide. Once again, it is not a banking finance. Our finance, we give up to 7 million Egyptian pounds in only machines and equipments. When you go to the bank, you say, for example, I need a loan to buy a car, to buy a flat, to buy a tracker, whatever. For us, we buy only machines and equipments. This equipments to be in the production line and to have a revenue, meaning that I will have an equipment in the production line in order to reduce the waste in the raw material or whatever, or renewable energy, or treating sewage water. It has to be what? An equipment. Not a building, not a car, not a truck. This is the first point. 7 million Egyptian pounds we give 1 year as free, and then 7 years. We are looking for the economic revenue for the factory that we are working with. This money to be paid from the revenue, from the profit. We, for example, an equipment, in order to reduce the waste of the raw material, I will see the expenses, how much I spent, how much I save. So being clever here in our study, that the 7 million pounds, whatever, 5-3, whatever, that they will be back from where? From the saving that the machine will achieve. And the same will implement on the solar panels, and we are going to explain this. Maybe the solar energy is not 5 years, they can be a little bit more, but actually to a limit, to an extent, a limit. Up to 7 years in the solar energy. The interest rate, she's asking him about the interest rate. It is not an interest rate, it's what we call administrative fees that is taken by the bank. We are not going to take this. The bank is going to take it, that is responsible for conducting the competences studies, meaning that the bank is going to study the factory from the credit point of view and will send me the papers telling me this factory from the credit point of view can take a loan. Then we give him the money, and the bank is responsible of collecting the installments and give it back to our account. There are administrative fees for the bank, 3.5% decreasingly, 1.9 for the credit, 1.9 of the whole credit. Again, it is not the interest, it is an administrative fees, and we don't take it. The bank will take it. 1.9 flat rate or 3.5 on the rest. I have a very important question. So after that, we'll give the chance to our colleagues. The system that we saw in India, the model, can you be the intermediary? Can you be RESCO here in Egypt? RESCO, we have it here in Egypt. We have it already. But the problem of the system in India, we did not mention the interference of the public sector, the interference of the government. There is a third party here in RESCO. If I'm going to do this on the rooftop of the factory, and I'm going to take the electricity to use it inside the factory, and to put the electricity on the grid, so there is a third party called the government. So I think Mr. Karim can explain this in details. So RESCO, we have it here in Egypt. It's not a new model in Egypt. Our loan is lower than RESCO. When we calculate the interest rate that is paid, so the financial support that we provide is lower. These are two different systems. There is a disadvantage actually, that we have to agree that the SMEs, their problems is that they are one-man show. The owner of the company, you will find him in the bank in order to do the credit guarantee, and he will come to us to do a technical review. Maybe he's traveling abroad in order to buy the equipment. So this is a problem, and this problem we don't find it in other cultures. So I cannot say that there are examples in Denmark or in Sweden. They are not a one-man show. And they have like an office. But here in Egypt, we have the one-man show. The owner will go to talk to the bank because he might not have a banking background, and he will be himself buying the machines. Maybe he doesn't have the experience of buying the machines or the equipments. And at the same time, he's responsible for the budget. So we will find a problem here in Egypt. The small and the medium enterprises, you will find that it's one man doing everything, and here for sure the problem will arise. When abroad, it's different because they know, for example, that there is a chamber. As she said, there is a template for contracting. You as a factory owner, you know the template. But in Egypt, it is he himself to go and do the contract. Maybe he is not capable of doing this. He doesn't have the skills. It's for everything in Egypt, unfortunately. There are rules for the clusters that include these SMEs to think on behalf of them and to do at least a list with the providers. Sometimes when we go to isolated areas outside Egypt, we find that people that they are selling solar plants that they are not up to the criteria or to the standard. Engineer Karim. Now, if RESCO exists, why it is not efficient, why it is not working properly the way she explained? Let's tell us about your work, and then answer the question. First of all, thank you so much for this opportunity. I heard a lot about the CES, but this is the first time to pay this visit to the CES. The idea of the solar energy and the renewable energy, this is not our specification. We were just a client like any other client that we wanted to have a solar plant. The idea of the risk, and that there is a company that will invest and will sell the electricity to the end user. We have it in Egypt, but there is a very important point which is not clear. The saving, how much is the saving? Is there any guarantee saving that RESCO will give to the final customer, 10%, 15%, whatever, from the price of the electricity in the state? From 10 to 15%, for example, or what? After the recent devaluation, the numbers differ because this will make the adoption of this model very difficult. But the biggest problem, in my own point of view, in the solar energy in Egypt is, and I don't want to accuse anyone, but is the resistance of the electricity distribution company to increase the capacity of the solar plants in order to sell more electricity. We should have a limit. A plant 20 kilos, no, they will say no, 10 kilos, and that's enough. The reason is totally understandable at that time, because they were very afraid that the electricity company, when we used to have surplus in electricity. So this is concerning the solar energy. As for our company, the introduction, what you said, Reliance, this is the old name. We changed the name of the company 5 months ago into ZeroCarbon. Maybe it's on the other side of the equation. We are a company that we help the companies to have environmental compliance or to reduce the carbon emissions. What is our role? We started as a company. Reliance Group is a company that works with the cement sector. We have a company for transporting cement. We have a big mining activity that is related to the cement industry. When we started this industry in the year 2012, 2013, to have a decree that we are allowed to import coal instead of gas, there was a decree from the Ministry of Environment that these factories will use an alternative fuel, which is RDF, which is, it's not recyclable. Whatever is can be flammable, sorry. So at that time we decided to penetrate the sector of producing the alternative fuel. But in order to produce alternative fuel from the wastes, so first of all we have to treat the solid wastes. What do I mean by this? I mean that all the solid wastes from a city, for example, instead of being burned in different places and in different areas, and any solid wastes, for sure it contains organic wastes, and sometimes they throw it in the sea or in the Nile. And I can tell you examples in the two places that we work in before and after. So the problem is, the big problem is, when we are going to produce RDF from the solid waste, the price will never cover the final cost of treating the whole wastes. So because we produce it from 15% and the 85% is not valuable at all, with a very low value, even if we are going to produce compost, but compost is not that valuable for the plants. So the whole world invented a concept which is the gate fee, which is the cost on every ton to be treated in a secured way. So we produce RDF, compost, and any valuable products. So in the year 2015, we established our first factory in Ismailia, and in the year 2016, we established the second factory in Portside. And Ismailia and Portside and the Portside are the two cities all over the Egyptian governorates that 100% responsible for. We treat the whole solid waste. We reached that the wastes that they don't go to the burial, it's more than 90%. This is why, because of the improvement that we implement in the operation. In order to reach this without gate free, we were about to close and to shut down in 2020. And actually one of the factories was closed. But actually here the state or the government suddenly felt, wow, you did an achievement. Portside, for example, the wastes were thrown to the west of the city in El Manzala lake, and from the lake to the Mediterranean Sea. Now it's totally different. The situation is totally different. So the state approved the gate free, and now it's part of the environmental law. how the government or how the state is going to continue this in all over the other governorates, I don't know. Here I'm talking about the cities. So our activities prevent the carbon emissions that they are produced from the waste from every city. Now the carbon footprint from Ismailia and Port Said is reduced to a great extent, and the RDF that we produce is a main component and a main factor to make the cement industry environmental compliance. The RDF is replacing the coal, and the coal actually is responsible for triple the amount of the carbon emissions. The coal is imported, and there is a problem for sure in the foreign currency, so you know the problem. In addition to the energy, there are factories that they reach about 50% or 75%. But for the cement factory to know how to use the RDF, we need investments. So I think that there is an EPAP program that is responsible for financing part of the transition of the factories to use the RDF. And the other part is the entrepreneurships, the leaders, that they were responsible for raising the awareness among the cement factories. I have a question. Normally, the issue of the waste processing is considered to be one of the biggest problems, especially the collection of the garbage. How did you overcome this problem? And before answering, I know, yeah, the scavengers, yes, yeah. Ah. And in India, you have scavengers, exactly the same like Egypt, right? The collection in Egypt, there is a wrong concept that in Egypt we have scavengers. No, we don't have any scavengers out of Cairo. We are talking about 80% of the Egyptian wastes are collected from the local units and from the municipalities. The idea of the scavengers and the rubbish collectors denied the real situation in the other governorates. It's done in a very bad way. In Cairo, the scavengers, they collect from the houses, meaning that the garbage collector will knock on your door and then will collect the rubbish or the garbage. But in most of the governorates, like Ismailia and Port Said, and Ismailia and Port Said, they are one of the cleaner cities in Egypt. You don't imagine how the situation is bad. What happens is the people will put the garbage in a bin in the street. This bin will be down in just 1 hour, and the scavengers will come and collect the garbage. So the only way that the local unit to collect the garbage will take a loader to remove the garbage with everything, with the pavement, with the cement, with the ground, with everything. So 35% of the garbage is cement and rocks and stones because of the wrong way of collecting the garbage. I think that the budget of the cities in order to reconstruct the pavements is because of the wrong way of collecting the garbage using the loaders. One of the governors visited me, and actually he saw the area and he saw how we paved this area. I told him, see, this is an achievement. He said, yes, well done. I told him, these are the rocks and the bricks that we get it from the garbage in only 1 month. So the problem of collecting the garbage in Egypt, the garbage will reach us after 3 or 4 days. And honestly speaking, I cannot blame the governor because the local units are not proper and are not qualified to do this job. This is a very complicated and difficult job. So no one is qualified to do this. The governor is totally convinced with what I'm saying, but he has nothing to do. And he is in pain. because he has these machines and these equipments that they are destroyed in the streets, and the money that is spent, lots of money. I have loaders. I can see that they are not working because they miss a spare part. So procurement is stopped now. You're working on the waste processing, so you're supposed to be the jewel of, or the jewel for the government. You are a jewel for the government. We have the license from WIMRA. This is an entity or a body that was established in the year 2016 under the supervision of the Ministry of Environment. They are qualified and they understand what they are doing. The problem with WIMRA, this entity, is not under the supervision of the Ministry of Industry. It is under the supervision of the Ministry of Environment. What we do in our process, it is an industrial environmental process. Okay? For example, if I am in Germany, it's a totally different story. The European, when they sell us the equipment, there is a kind of conflict because he sells to a totally different mentality and to a totally different city. For this reason, the model, the Indian model is relevant to the Egyptian model, much more relevant to the Egyptian. We need the Indian equipments to Egypt to help us in Egypt, to help us in the garbage collection. We'll do a kind of business transaction between Egypt and India. But now the Ministry of Industry and the IDA, they don't admit this activity as an industrial activity. Me as a company, I don't have an importing card, and I don't have any card for the needs of any industrial factories have in Egypt. So we are talking to the Federation. This is an industrial activity. Just a second. Engineer Ahmed, you're not helping him at all? You're the Federation. Why you're not helping him? He is an industrial company. How you are not convincing the authority that he is an industrial company? I cannot hear him. He's not up now. Yes. What happened is, this is a dialogue between the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of Environment. We, the Federation here, we have nothing to do with this. Actually, it's not our decision. The activity. The members of the Federation, they must be first to get the approval of the Ministry of Industry. So this is the problem of the conflict between industry and environment. Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Industry, they have to agree together and then to tell me that he is an industrial company, so he will be a member. Okay? The idea of the environmental compliance, Dr. Habla, even we told them, okay, you're not convinced that I am an industrial company. I have the license. Okay, so at least allow us to import. Give us an import card. This is one of the problems that we face. At the end, we conducted a meeting between the two bodies. The investment authority, they provide lots of incentives. So I went to the investment authority in order to get some of the incentives. Actually, the law of the when we established our company, the law 72, the investment law 72 was not drafted yet. So they told me, we don't know you. We are not going to give you anything. You are not under the supervision of the investment authority. So all the incentives that are given by the investment authority to the companies, we don't get it. I'm not benefiting at all from the investments. Why? Because my company was established before drafting the law 72 of investment. I'm very negative. I'm very down. But I'm optimistic at the end. I'm trying to be actually. Okay. you use the home waste, not the factory's waste. We collect a huge amount of industrial waste. So why I'm asking you your question, I want to go back to the RESCO, because if you take from many parts, or from many sources, so you are RESCO, you're taking from small factories or small companies, and then you deal with your own self. What we are trying to do to produce to collect the solid waste, as Mr. Ahmed is saying, to reduce waste is one of the most important goals of sustainability. So what's known in Egypt that the wastes are burned, the industrial wastes, or it is used as to produce a second quality product. What we are doing now, we are doing a kind of industrial waste mapping for all the industrial wastes all over Egypt. We started in 3 industrial zones, and then we start establishing the database of the wastes that is coming out of every factory. The majority of the wastes we collect it and we produce the RDF, because the wastes are of high quality, so it will increase the quality of the RDF. But now we have other wastes that they are used in different usage, not only RDF. So according to the type of the waste, for example, I have the wood wastes, the sawdust. The sawdust, for example, can be used as wood pallet, and it can be used as energy source. This is a product that can be produced from a waste, and it can be exported, and it can help in bringing foreign currency in Egypt. This is a kind of recycling of the wastes. Do you have any agreements with the small factories, with the supplies? The idea of the aggregation can solve many problems, but there are factories, an area of the 1,000 factories, for example, all of them, they do have wastes. Can you do a kind of an agreement to take the wastes from them, and according to this agreement you deal with the financer with a specific way, implementing the RESCOM model on the level of collecting the wastes or producing? No, collecting the wastes and dealing with the wastes, producing products from the wastes to give you whatever you need in order to produce the RDF. And according to this agreement and this cooperation, you can help them to get the finance and use it in whatever they need. But please put into your consideration that collecting the garbage or collecting the waste is very costly. If you're going to collect small wastes, the cost is very high. Sometimes the factories are not capable of paying the fees of getting rid of the wastes, because the owner of the wastes, he has to pay the fees of collecting the wastes and the transportation as well. So we get rid of the waste through recycling and producing a new product, and this is costly as well. The risk is that the big factories in Egypt, they start to be aware of the secured waste, and this will impact on their sustainable development report. So they say, for example, we are going to pay you in order to transport and to treat the wastes. It is a cost center for the factory itself. There are some exceptions that we have some factories that they have very high quality of wastes that can be sold. Thank you so much, Mr. Am.